2025 Emergency Fire Cost Committee meeting to order. This obviously is a hybrid meeting. We will have some more people start to show up here momentarily. We will take comments from the public at agenda item number 10. So as you hear me going through the list, if you would like to make a comment, please prepare yourself for when we get to that agenda item. Roll call quickly. I see Miss Vanetta.
I'm here. How do I sound?
Loud and clear. Thank you. And we have two new members with us joining us for their first meetings today. Eric Kranzish, representing kind of actually the delegate at large for a position because Southwest and Northwest are already occupied. And John Davis representing the East Side. Welcome, gentlemen. Both of these gentlemen come with extensive fire finance and firefighting experience, and I believe will be a great addition to this committee as we move forward into the future. So with that, I will move on to agenda item number 2, and I will approval of the minutes of our March 4th, 2025 meeting. Look for a motion to approve those minutes as they were emailed to committee members.
This is Catherine. I move to adopt the meeting minutes of the March 4th, 2025 meeting as provided.
Okay, and I'll second that actually, because you and I were the only ones here from that meeting. All those in favor of accepting the motion, respond with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote. No reason to take a counter vote. Agenda item number 3, the financial status of the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund. Hi, Lorna. Can you please give us the financial report?
Yes, certainly. For the record, I'm Lorna Hobbs. I am the EFCC Finance Coordinator. My report today covers the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund's actual revenues and expenditures through April 30th, 2025, and projected revenues and expenditures through the end of the fiscal year. The beginning balance on July 1st, 2024 was $10,811,138. Under revenues for fiscal year 25, item number 1, to date, total assessment revenues received is $9,147,038. Item number 2, harvest tax revenues received as of April 30th equal $1,365,171. And there will be one more harvest tax payment for this fiscal year. Item number 3, interest received to date is $240,045, and the interest rate dropped again from 4.7% to 4.6% on March 12th. Items 4 through 6, these 3 entries are the result of fund reconciliations of previous fiscal years that resulted in monies owed back to the fund. We haven't had time to verify the amounts transferred with ODF yet and have questions related to fiscal year 2017. But once verified, we can provide specific details on each of these transfers. Total revenue received for fiscal year 25 as of April 30th was $10,752,254. And estimated total revenue, including the revenues from the previous fiscal years, is $11,877,479. Under expenditures for fiscal year 25, the first 2 items are monies that were paid back to the large fire fund, the Department of Forestry, as a result of previous fiscal year fund reconciliations, as I discussed previously up above under revenues. Item number 3 is the estimated payroll and operating expenses, and that remains at $185,000 for fiscal year 25. We're currently estimating it tracking it at about 164,000, so it will be under the 185,000. Item number 4 is the payment of $3 million for the fund's contribution to fire season 2024 severity costs, and that was made back in November of 2024. Under 2024 fire season draft claims, currently the estimated net claim total still remains at $130,490,517. In September 2024, $4 million was advanced to the Douglas Forest Protective Association for the Dixon Fire. An additional $6 million was paid to the Department of Forestry to pay for fire season expenses. Fiscal year 25 expenditures are currently at $13 million with payroll and operating costs for fiscal year 25 being transferred to ODF before the end of this month. The total estimated expenditure amount, including those from the previous fiscal years, is $13,593,992. The fund balance as of April 30th was $9,094,625 with estimated ending balance of $9,645,983. And that is the end of my report, unless there are any questions.
Any questions from committee members? I have one. On the item 4 under the revenue, just to be clear that I'm understanding the spreadsheet properly, you're kind of holding that in suspense. The reconciled.
We have received that.
Okay, so that's fully received. Okay, I'm following now. All right. Questions from committee members or comments? Okay. Hearing none, thank you for the report. And we will move on to item number 4, the weather update. Ms. Alcock, I see you are on. Hi. It'd be great if you could give us a synopsis of the weather for the season, upcoming season. This is the one that I wait with the most bated breath each year. The floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Teresa Alcock. Folks know me as TZA, and I work for the Protection Division as the Fire Planner Analyst, and have lately been producing these fire season outlooks and weather briefings in conjunction with working with our smoke management meteorologists and other folks around the region. So today I'm just going to give you guys the overview, the broad overview. I'll try to go quickly. I know you guys are always like to keep things concise. So we're just going to do a quick recall of some of the influences on fire season weather and conditions, and take another look at Pete Parsons' seasonal climate forecast, good conclusions from that. And then I wanted to go into soil moisture just a little bit based off of that seasonal climate forecast. And then look at the drought, and we'll take a look at some temperature and precipitation departures from back in October 1st, the water year start date, and just within the last month. And then we'll take a quick look at the snowpack and the snow water equivalent and see where we're at with the melt. And then a quick fire danger indices check for the ERC and the fuel moistures. And then I'm going to run through the forecasted temperatures and precipitation from the Climate Prediction Center. Thought I'd give you guys a little bit fuller picture from 6 to 10 days out through the season. And then the Northwest Coordination Center has started to develop their significant fire potential product daily now. And we'll round out with the national significant fire potential. So just some seasonal influences the equatorial sea surface temperatures, or the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and we are in the neutral status. I think we reported on that with Pete Parsons' last EFCC meeting, and ENSO neutral is still active now, and it's expected to remain through the summer. There's potential for warmer conditions to come up from Mexico up into and reach up into the bottom end of the Northwest. And then we've got the sea surface temperatures around the Pacific. This is new information that I'm learning from Eric Snodgrass at agweather.com. Very comprehensive weather briefings. So we're looking at that Gulf of Alaska and Baja California. There's two indicators there that can affect our Western North American climate. And so some of the meteorologists are looking around at those regions and seeing if cool waters develop off the coast in the Gulf of Alaska and off the Baja. There could be that high pressure system setting over the Pacific, and then in turn, a high pressure over the interior of the US. And so we're watching that high pressure over the Pacific, how close it reaches us, and then those coastal waters off of the Western North American continent. And the monsoon, residual, but effects that can bring some moisture up north, but can also bring those thunderstorms with lightning. And by the time we get those residual effects, our fuels may have already been dried out and receptive to those lightning strikes. So Pete Parsons had updated his climate forecast in May of 15th, and similar to what was forecasted in April, that above average ridging is very likely to occur over the Pacific Northwest, meaning warmer and drier than average conditions, and a heightened chance of lightning. And his analysis looks at prior years with similar El Nino and so neutral conditions, and 2006 and 2017 were some key years that we have acreage information for. And 2017 was about average for the decade, and 2006 was a little bit less than average for the decade, but these are more indicators of influence on the season. And on the previous slide, on the precipitation, it showed the Willamette Valley at a potential for much lower than normal precipitation. And over the past couple of months, I've been monitoring the soil moisture conditions because I noticed early in April, I was looking at the soil moisture and noticed that the west side of Oregon was very dry. And I watched the moisture that came through in May and captured a recent image just from yesterday to see if any of that dryness was alleviated in that soil moisture. And that soil moisture, you know, is going to affect our fuel conditions as well, and how much evaporative demand those fuels will want to pull that moisture out of the atmosphere. And so we have some improvement in the soil moisture in the west side and in the valley there, but still very dry. Draw your attention a little bit to that Pendleton zone, that Pendleton area, the Columbia Basin going up into Tri-Cities and up into Southeast Washington there. Very dry conditions there and along our coast. And so the drought monitor reflects part of that. You know, in April, we were declared drought free, better than 2023 and 2022 for sure. But we're going back into moderate drought in these areas, up around Pendleton area in the Northeast, and then the Northwest of Oregon there. So the drought's going to have an influence. And the drought for Oregon, especially up in the north, in these two kind of critical regions, Northeast Oregon and Northwest, it's expected to persist through the next few months. So just taking a look back since the water year, I wanted to see, you know, whether we got good quality precipitation and what the temperatures were like. And so we've got two tiny graphics at the top. That's from the water year. So you can just see from the precipitation map on the right that we had, and you heard the news stories about Burns flooding and even flooding around Roseburg area and south of Eugene and so forth. And so we had really good precipitation in the southern part of the state, and Klamath's for sure needed it. But in the last month, even though we were surprised a little bit to get some precipitation and cooler shots of weather in May, uh, we're still far below normal precipitation, even for our spring months. So that's the map, the bigger map on the right, showing 10%, 30 up to 30% of average. And then a temperature map on the left shows that we still had those elevated temperatures, especially in the southeast and up in northeast Oregon, a little bit up in the Dalles as well. And you'll see that reflected in the ERCs coming through too. So let's take a look at the snow water equivalent. The watershed maps are really, really kind of great for at a glance. Color schemes, the cooler, the bluer, the more snowpack still remains. But the chart on the bottom is really telling. The black line through this colorful line chart here shows the current snow water equivalent. And there's a little green X in the middle there about April 1st or so. That's the peak of our snow accumulation. And so we've had a really good winter snowpack, but as soon as April hit us, April was a pretty dry and warm time, and brought that snow melt right down. So it's a very steep drop off in our snow water equivalent, and now we're nearing toward the bottom of the snow melt period here, and then it'll just be continue to melt out and be drier. So back in April, we also had moderate potential for some of the ODF districts, especially on the west side, reflecting some of the dry, warm conditions of April. And now we're back into that. May helped us out a little bit, cooling things off, a little bit of moisture scattered around the state. But now we're back up into moderate potential. And this shows us the potential for large, costly fires. Our Fire Environment Working Group produces the results on this map and the charts that take into account climatological history, fire history, and large fire costs. And so it's an innovative product here that we continue to improve on and develop. So what I do is take just a snapshot around the state. I don't cover every district on these presentations just because there's a lot of content. And just looking at kind of the west side and the east side, on these charts, this is the ERC. It shows the energy, the available energy at the flaming front of a fire, kind of how hot the fires can burn. And it takes into account a long-term drought over the season and the influence of moisture on the larger fuels. And these charts have a blue line, that's last year's data, and then the gray lines which show a maximum over the past 10 years normally, and then the minimum. And then the red line shows the daily streaming data coming in from the WIMS system, the Weather Management Information System. And so just overall, you know, we were starting out at above average ERCs from May 1st. Then we had the little bit of a dip because of the cool shots of moisture and precip. But now we're back up above normal and on the climb toward even maximum levels for in the case of South Cascade and Southwest Oregon is about in the middle between average and maximum. They are expected to increase over the next 7 days. We do have a little bit of a forecast in there. Northwest Oregon area is sitting a little bit better at about average, but a lot of fluctuation here in the first part of May. That's kind of the west side. And the east side, again, started out above normal conditions for starting from May 1st, and then dips with the precipitation we had through May. But again, everything, here we go, it is on the rise, and especially in light of kind of a heat wave that we're going to be getting here this week. So for fuel moistures, starting out below normal fuel moistures for the west side, and you know, climbed a little bit in the fuel moisture because of May, but heading back down and forecasted to decrease. The green up here is still happening. It's still in the growing cycle for a lot of our herbaceous fuels and live woody fuels. But even south-facing slopes where I'm at, just near Malala, are already cured. So things are curing quickly. And the same thing on the east side, a little bit worse. They started out drier, except for Klamath. Klamath's in good shape. Finally, you can say that, a little bit in good shape, but still everybody is starting to cure out and getting a lot drier as we go in through to June here. So I'll run through the Climate Prediction Center forecasts. And so this takes us through the June 11th. And, we're expecting moderate heat conditions, especially in the Willamette Valley here and throughout the Northwest and the Western U.S. And below normal precipitation. This takes us a little bit further out. It just shows that high pressure moving toward the east. So the worst of it will be over, around June 9th through 15th. It's still below normal precipitation. And the monthly is a little bit more of a vague overall average. And so it begins, we're starting with these pulses of heat starting this weekend. It's coming in. And then overall, we're expecting above normal temperatures and well below normal precipitation through the summer months through August. Northwest Coordination Center is producing their 7-day significant fire potential. Things are still in the green. Most of the areas there and low potential for large fires. I just wanted to point out that Klamath is going to have a little bit of an uptick to elevated potential on Sunday. We got the heat coming in. The National Significant Wildland Fire Potential Outlook for June has added a little bit further south into central Oregon. Before it was just up there, that Pendleton area. So we've increased the potential in through central Oregon there, north central. And then for July, encompasses the eastern half of the state. That's kind of how we started out last year with July, the eastern half of the state. And then August and September both look pretty consumed there for above normal potential around the whole northwest of the U.S. So just recap, similar prior years showed this ridging across the west. We have several different indicators and that some of the meteorologists are watching to see how things affect our climate and our weather through the summer. The snowpack was decent, but it's melting quickly. Soil moisture deficits, got to watch for those. And fuel moistures are drier than average. Live herbaceous fuels are curing quickly. And after we've had these mid-May cool shots of showers, the forecasts are calling for warmer and drier conditions through the season. You saw the significant fire potential. And given the conditions and fire activity over the past decade or so, consider 2025 an active fire season unless conditions strongly signal otherwise. And at next update, we'll have different and more information. So I appreciate you listening. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for a very thorough and dismal, but very good presentation on the weather. Any questions or comments from committee members? Well, Michael, you're going to have your hands full, it looks like. Thank you again, TZA. It's a very good report. Okay, let's move on to item number 5, an update on the status of large fire cost collection efforts. Mr. Narns, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks for having me again. So yeah, since we've got a few new committee members here, for the record, I'm Kyle Nairns, the cost recovery specialist for the Department of Forestry, and give you kind of a general update of cost recovery efforts across the agency that are really related to the committee in general. So that first page on there, the cost collection recovery report, that's just kind of a general idea of what's contained in this report. So I'd encourage you to read through that. In general, it is just kind of a snapshot of what's happened over the last quarter as it relates to the fires that have really affected this committee, financially, as far as the investment towards those fires. So not an all-inclusive list of what the department's doing as far as cost recovery, but good idea for you folks as far as what we're doing. So I'll hop into each section and try to cover, a synopsis of what each of those means. So on the report itself, you'll see there in the first section, the claims under active cost collection. So those fires highlighted in green, those are our new cost recovery cases that were added as of last report. So Large Creek Fire, they're the first one that cases in restitution, which is associated with a criminal case. So the county took that one over and turned it to the DA, and they're the ones handling that case now. So if we see money, it'll be through that process. And that was a fire from just this last year. South Open Chain, we got that demand out recently. Some of these bigger fires, especially from 2020, they're taking a little bit just to compile all the documents and make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row. There was a lot of things going on around that time. So it's making sure the package we send off to the responsible party is solid as we know it. So Echo Mountain is now combined with Kimberling. We had recently demanded Kimberling on its own, but those two are now combined as one demand. And that authority is granted to us in 477069 to be able to do that, to simplify the process for ourselves and if it makes sense. And financially, these fires were tied together from the beginning as a complex, so it just makes it easier on the back end to reconcile those numbers if we do get monies back. And then two others there on the list, the MacGyver and Cedar Creek, those were recently demanded and just still working through the process on those ones. And there's a couple more later in the report that we did demand out that we received payment on already, and I'll cover those here in a little bit. So next section there, the claims under long-term cost collection action. So this is just a snapshot of not all, but some of the fires we have under payment plan or restitution. So we're receiving payments, but it'll be over an extended period of time. We've got quite a few on this list here that affect the committee. You'll see the one highlighted in green. That one was just recently completed. So that payment plan has been fully satisfied and we'll be closing that case. So it'll drop off the report next time. Other than that, any changes in amounts are captured in that payment received column, and that's just an ongoing total. So the difference kind of from this report and last report would be what we'd received. And for this last quarter was a little over $2,000 for some of those smaller cases. And then the third section there, closed fire cost collection claims. You'll see two highlighted in green. Those were the two that were demanded and paid within the last quarter. So the 7K fire for $300,000, that was just a statutory cost recovery amount. So operator or burning related fire where they're mandated to pay at least $300,000 in fire costs. And all of those monies go back to the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund. And then Mercer Lake, that was an additional one that was demanded and paid. And that one was actually billed out by the local unit, kind of part of our new process under the new policy to help get some of those smaller to medium-sized fires out the door quicker and hopefully through the process. So seeing some of those benefits come back already over just the last few months. And then the other one in there, Mystic Mountain, we did receive full payment on that one finally. So total collections in those large fires over the last quarter, over $550,000 you can see there. So not too bad for the quarter. And then the last section, just significant fire investigations in progress. Again, not an all-inclusive list of what we have going on investigation-wise, but these are incidents that, excuse me, either had a large investment by the committee, an ODF team was deployed, or just high public interest in some of these fires. So just a list for you guys to keep an eye on, and some general updates as we go through the process. If these do move to cost recovery, which not all of them will, they'll end up, back up at the top of the list. And if they are determined not to be sufficient for cost recovery, it'll just be deleted off the list on the next report. So again, just a general idea of some of those larger investigations that we've got going on there. That is The end of my report, unless there are questions.
Any questions from committee members? It's a good report. Thank you, Kyle. And I appreciate the continued focus and dedication on this. You know, as you look at the total dollar amounts that you have in the 4 different buckets here, it's substantial. And those are citizens' dollars that have paid into that. And I think it's important and very, very valuable work that we continue to work towards it. Collecting those. I think it also serves, because people talk and businesses talk, it serves as a good deterrent to recognize that if you're going to make silly decisions with fire or be negligent in your actions, it can be extremely, extremely painful financially. And I hope the public continues to understand that. So that's an important message, but you're at the tip of the spear to making sure that that comes to reality. So thank you very much. Okay. With that, we can move on to, I believe we are on item 6. Yep. Agenda item number 6, the eligibility of the firefighting cost for the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund. Ms. Hirsch, can you give the committee an overview of the proposed changes? This is an update to the changes that we adopted 3 meetings ago.
November.
Yeah. Can you lead us through here? Thank you.
Morning, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Nancy Hirsch. I'm the Emergency Fire Cost Committee Administrator. Purpose of this agenda item is to seek the committee's approval of the proposed changes to the eligibility policy. And as Brennan just mentioned, originally this policy was approved in November 2024 and was really put together through a collaborative effort of Department of Forestry, Fiscal Protection Division, and EFCC staff, along with leadership. And at the same time, fire season was happening. So that's why we're back here today with some minor changes being proposed. I'll touch briefly on these. Basically, we have, well, first of all, in your handout, you have 2 attachments to this staff report. And the first attachment reflects the proposed policy with track changes. The second attachment represents no track change, but I will just highlight them briefly. So the first item, it relates to 4 housekeeping changes that address cleaning up language that was either missed or addresses grammar issues. So I think those are pretty straightforward. The last 3 proposed changes address an omission and provide some clarification. This is specific to trainee eligibility on fires, and that affects 2 sections, both under eligibility and not eligible. And then the third item is really a clarification related to protection funded all or part in reference to eligibility. So important changes for consistency, particularly, and really meeting the goal of the original proposed policy of trying to be more efficient and effective in dealing with fire records. The next steps would be to continue to learn throughout this fire season and plan to complete an after-action review by the end of basically at the end of fire season, and come back with a report to the committee and determine if other improvements are necessary or not. Unless there's changes or you want me to go through more detail, I would recommend the committee approve the changes proposed to the eligibility policy as presented.
Any questions or comments from committee members?
This is Catherine. I have a question for Nancy. The last 3 changes Are those distinctions without a difference? Or do those change the policy for are you clarifying things?
Thanks, Catherine. One is certainly clarification related to the protection funded all or part. On the trainee edits, our original proposal, as it was approved, shifts all of the operational positions in the district budgets to be eligible for reimbursement. And our fiscal analysis included that. An unintended consequence, the way the policy ended up being written is that it took those operational positions functioning as trainees and pushed them into not eligible, and that was not the intent. So that's essentially a cleanup. The omission then is really related to the fact that the proposed policy today would basically make all trainees on all statistical and approved threat fires eligible regardless of type of incident. And so it does add in the type 3, and that would be the only change.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I wanted to get that for the record. Thank you.
Comments or questions from other? John, Eric? Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Gerald. Wanted to say that, we're constantly challenged with filling our leadership roles on our fire teams, especially during our most difficult fire seasons. In my opinion, I don't think we should create any impediments to ensuring or financial impediments to ensuring that professional development. I support the changes there, especially for the clarification on the trainees, and would recommend that we adopt the changes as proposed.
Okay. Is that your motion?
I so move.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Second.
And a second by John. All those in favor of adopting the update to the eligibility policy as presented, respond with aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote. No need to request any opposed. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, agency and business services report. Ms. Skinner, welcome. With us today, we have Kate Center, Acting State Forester, Michael Curran, and Ron Graham. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And good morning, everybody. Kate Skinner for the record. James Short is not here. I'm looking at the screen for Tracy to see if you're going to fill in on some of these topics, I'm hoping. I also just wanted to take a couple seconds here to say thank you. I know Lorna and Nancy have been running around the state on the audits and the end of season. Tremendous effort to get those done, as well as the districts and everybody, the associations on those, and say thank you to everybody for those efforts. And I know we had folks that stepped in from other districts to help out and all those kind of pieces. And so I just wanted to recognize that off the bat here and say thank you for that. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Tracy, to kind of fill in the blanks here. I didn't coordinate with you or James on which topics to take, so I'm going to turn it to you, but thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Kate. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Tracy Rolson, I'm Protection Finance Unit Manager for ODF. And as Kate mentioned, James is unable to attend today due to scheduling conflict, but he did include 2 items within your package of materials. One is the agency financials, which is the Oregon Department of Forestry financial report from May. And the other one is a legislative session and the preliminary LFO recommended budget. His notes to me was just to ask you to review those materials. I will share my screen here quickly, though, because I do want to highlight one piece on the financial report from May that is in my wheelhouse with these financials for the agency. And kind of same tone there as Kate made about the good work being done. And I want to highlight here under the fire protection financial status. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you. The great work going on across the state to bring in revenue, not only for OFLPF, but for the agency as a whole. And this table here, that's a summary of estimated outstanding assets and liabilities. These are outstanding co-op billings, cost share reconciliations, all of that, and the dollar amount that's still outstanding. So as you can see, as of this May report, there's $133 million outstanding between co-op billing and then cost share and non-cost share billings. Within the last month and a half, there's been approximately $90 million that has been billed out or reconciled and being prepared to bill out in the next week or so for the agency. So huge kudos for our districts, our district business managers and staffs out in the field and in Salem for the work being done here to generate this revenue and get our billings out as timely as possible. So just wanted to highlight that real quick, showing that great work going on across the state. I'll move on to the next topic here, strategic investments fund recap. So these numbers are through the end of April. And in the fund, actual spent is $858,129. Pending expenditures, $75,800 that haven't hit our expense registers yet, but we know that they are paid. And then our remaining projected balance at this point is $585,447 into strategic investments. Going on to page 2 of that material is the breakdown by project that was approved on strategic investments. And you'll see a lot of still in progress, but movement being made and expenditures being shown against these projects, which is great. Again, with that ending balance of $585,447 remaining to spend. Our areas have completed within this package also a brief synopsis of the current status of each one of these projects for your review and where things are currently at. And again, our goal here is to try to get these projects wrapped up as soon as possible, pending fire season and pending weather and all of that good stuff dealing with some of these projects. I'll pause there if there's any questions on strategic investments.
Any questions?
Yeah, just a comment, Tracy. Nancy
Yeah.
Hirsch, Emergency Fire Cost Committee Administrator. I was able to forward some photos of a couple of strategic investments just late yesterday that came in from Eastern Oregon area related to the guard station. I think it's called Oban Chain out in the Klamath Lake District, and then also a photo of the fire cache trailer out of Walker Range.
Thanks, Nancy.
Excellent. Yeah, my only comment is, some of these monies have been awarded several years ago, and I look forward for them, especially ahead of what we can finish this fire season, to put them into action, recognizing the fire season that we'll face. I'm eager to see some of these completed. It looks like, yeah, Ms. Minor, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Gina Miner, Assistant Area Director for Eastern Oregon area. And I just wanted to extend an invitation to any EFC member that wants to see the guard station. They are having an all-employee meeting on June 25th. So if you'd like to do that, let me know and I'll make it happen.
Excellent. Thank you for that invitation. We will touch base if any member wants to head out there and see that. Okay. All right. Tracy, do you have anything left?
FEMA and severity, which will be fairly quick here for you.
Sure.
So the material handed or given to you on the FEMA status, some progress made. Obviously, we have a very detailed list here of every single FEMA project. Like to note anything with an asterisk next to it are pre-positioning claims, and those have been submitted for reimbursement, not reflected though yet in the dollar amount that's pending review. We're in transition there of that being sent over to FEMA. But ultimately, in the end, we're looking at $73,492,722 and $722 of outstanding dollars owed to ODF through FEMA or public assistance claims. Some of these older fires, older years are being wrapped up. Most of those are going to be administrative claims. Golden Fire was submitted from 2 fire seasons ago. And last fire season, some great progress again being made there on finishing up auditing and getting some things submitted. You know, we have submitted some smaller claims also for some residual things dealing with public assistance where we're able to receive monies back for kind of outside the area of the actual fire. Just the way public assistance works, and it brings in a few more dollars there. So working hard on getting these dollars reconciled and sent off to FEMA ASAP and also Oregon for public assistance side.
Yeah, excellent.
And last, yep, sorry, Chair.
Nope, continue. I was just
All right.
remarking excellent.
And last but not least, our severity. Not much movement on this either. With the new fire season coming up and coming up in the short term, I'm sure Michael or Ron will chat about this a little bit with severity resources coming on here shortly. But kind of reconciling last fire season here, we're looking at a balance of about $982,000 that are available to use through the end of this biennium, which is rapidly approaching here. So good to have that funding available to bring ships on as fast as we can, needed on condition. But yeah, detailed breakout here as usual of each ship and manager, helitack crew, so on and so on of what expenditures were last fire season. Ultimately, in the end, the $3 million, as Lorna stated in her report, has been obligated from OFOPF as contribution to the severity work. And yeah, next report you'll see will have less numbers on it. Well, I guess actually it'll have a lot more numbers on it, just new, because new fire season coming up. So sitting steady financially with severity at this point. And to report, Chair, unless there's any questions.
Any questions, committee members? I have none. Thank you very much for a very thorough report, Tracy. I'll hand the floor back to you.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the recommended budget, and I know Nancy sent that out. So tentatively right now, I think we're scheduled for Thursday to have our Ways and Means subcommittee hearing and get that finalized. Really, the budget that's reflected in what Nancy sent out today is really our current service level. So I honestly feel really good about that, considering all the noise that's out there and the competition for dollars and the really difficult questions that the state of Oregon's dealing with. So I'm feeling positive about that. This doesn't reflect, of course, the ongoing conversations around large fire, wildfire funding, all those kind of pieces that's still playing around downtown in the legislature. And I'll turn it over to Michael for a little more detail down about that. But Kyle Williams, our deputy, is down there today along with our legislative director. I know they have 10 or 12 meetings scheduled trying to answer questions and assist folks with understanding around the needs and the plans for wildfire funding. So I'll turn it to you, Michael.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. So for the record, Michael Curran, I'm the Fire Protection Division Chief for ODF. Yeah, so we're kind of in the home stretch with the current legislative session. Anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. I believe sign die is June 18th, but I think all signs are pointing that they're going to go past that into the next week for sure. So unknown when it will ultimately end, but June 18th is kind of that first benchmark for them to meet. Kate covered our budget bill. That's Senate Bill 5521, just awareness for folks. So you have that. with our hearing on Thursday. There was some nuances with that this year. It was originally scheduled last week, but ended up getting canceled just due to some of the nuances around the harvest tax bill. And with potential changes being made to that also in 3940, if that were to pass as is, really needed to figure out kind of implications on if we passed our budget bill on the harvest tax and then we made harvest changes to the harvest tax later on in the session due to the fire funding bill, what's the downstream impact to the rest of the bills that they already discussed. So, but that's back on track. I don't know all what was worked through necessarily between those items, but the harvest tax bill passed last week, I believe, or earlier this week. And then our budget bill has a hearing on Thursday. So things seem to be on track there. Obviously, for you all, Senate Bill 3940 or House Bill 3940, sorry, the large fire funding bill, still in play. It's been kind of a weird session to where folks are waiting kind of till the last minute to really start diving into these. And I would say it really got kickstarted when the comment was made from our governor about using the kicker. And that's really kickstarted some conversations, and hence why Kyle and Derek are down in the building today. They'll probably actually spend most of this week and next week in the building, along with our OSFM partners, really just trying to have conversations with legislators, make sure folks are tracking the issues, and just being available to answer questions as needed. So a lot of work going on there and a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. So we'll continue to keep a very close eye on that one. With that, Senate Bill 83, which was going to be the primary vehicle for the wildfire hazard map repeal, that's kind of being used as a bargaining chip for now to try to make some movement on the fire funding bill. So we'll see where that one ends up. But all signs are still pointing that bill is going to go through. But for now, there's definitely lots of news out there as that's being held as a bargaining chip currently in the session. So. Senate Bill 1051, the bill that ultimately will change the hiring of the state forester from the Board of Forestry over to the governor's office. We're still being told that still has legs and is still moving forward. So we'll see where that ultimately ends up, but that is still part of conversations moving forward as we get to the end of session here. And then just a couple agency specific bills, House Bill 2817, that's would essentially abolish our permit closure. Has passed through all the committees and is headed to the governor's office for signature. So that one's passed. And then the other one, House Bill 2819, which ultimately allows us a little more flexibility in being able to issue citations to where we don't have to physically observe it. That as long as a first responder observes it and we show up and we have a conversation and we feel there's good proof that we have a case there, we'll be able to issue that citation. That's passed the House and has been on to the Senate. And all signs are pointing that'll be able to get across the finish line as well. Levi and Derek got pulled into the building, I think 3 or 4 different times over a matter of 2 days in various committees to just answer questions and make some future amendments to it. But I think we ultimately ended up in a good spot with that bill overall. So at a high level, I would say that's kind of the legislative update. It's going to be a wild 2 or 3 weeks here coming up, and I'm sure you all will hear about it in the news as this decisions start to be made. But like I said, Kyle and Derek are spending a lot of time down at the Capitol right now, just trying to make sure we got a presence in the building and answering any questions that we can to keep things moving along. And it'll be interesting what we end up with the fire funding bill. We've heard talks of all or nothing or bits and pieces. So I wouldn't say there's any specific thing where we know we're going to see for sure. But I think at the end of the day, I'd classify it as there's still a good understanding of just the fire funding issues as a whole downtown, and folks know there's a problem that we need to try to resolve. So I think it's ultimately going to come down to just how much money they have to spend and then what the priority within the bills are will end up being for them. But I think it's good to know, though, there's still a lot of conversations going on and still a lot of interest and an understanding of what the issues are. So that's all I got, unless there's questions for the legislative update.
Very good. Any questions from committee members or comments? I appreciate the update on the legislative process and also on the communication and what's happening. I think with that, we can move to agenda item number 8. Michael, looking to you and Ron for a protection division as we enter or have already in certain districts entered fire season.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. So I'll kind of cover stuff at a high level, and then I'll let Ron and staff kind of go over the rest of the items you have on the agenda. So you all heard TZA's warm and fuzzy fire season prediction presentation. All signs are pointing we are going to have another bad fire season in our hands this summer. And really, it all kicked off when that faucet turned off on us on the month of April, and we saw conditions change rapidly. I think we all thought we'd be sitting in a good spot, especially when that drought map was showing no drought in the state of Oregon in the month of April. But that's quickly changing as we get further and closer to summer here. So a lot of good work going on behind the scenes to make sure we're prepped for fire season, both at the division level and at the district level. So feeling where we're really good at where we're at just from a preparedness standpoint. There are districts starting to go into fire season. Southwest Oregon, Walker Range went in June 1st. Central Oregon District went in June 2nd. And I'm starting to hear that Northeast Oregon is going in Thursday, and then DFPA, CFPA going in Friday. So I think what you're going to start to see is as we move further north, especially on the west side, you'll start to see more of the west side districts go into fire season as we get further into June. So as of this Friday, at least half of the districts statewide will be in fire season. So, and we are starting to see an uptick of just fire responses. We're still able to catch them fairly small still, but we are seeing an uptick in fire responses overall, especially in Central Oregon District and in Southwest Oregon. But we are helping out quite a bit with our out-of-state dispatches recently, primarily through the Northwest Compact, but we've got a few staff up in Alaska on a prepo. They're expecting their fire season to pick up shortly. We also are taking advantage of some work with the state of Minnesota to further bolster our aviation qualifications. So we've got a few folks in Minnesota right now, and the same, I think one in Florida. Canada has seen their fire season ramp up pretty quickly over the last week. So we've got, I think, 14 resources in Alberta, and we've sent a few more to Saskatchewan this week as well. So I think all in all, we're sitting around 27, 28 that are out of state right now assisting our partners. And there's also talk of potentially putting together a Northwest Compact incident management team to go assist Canada. This is a concept they've been, we've used it historically, but there's been a lot of conversations this year just due to some of the federal funding shortfalls and in staffing that they really brought back forth to utilize this summer. So it's one of those things that I want to be able to support that as best we can now, because I would say there could be a very high likelihood we may be asking for that similar type of resource later on this summer. So while we're still a little bit slower with our fire activity, I want to support that where we can. So there's a good chance we could see 3 to 5 more folks potentially go out of state if they actually do order up that compact IMT. Before I get to the WHOOP update, just a couple other things. I think Ron and his staff are doing a lot of really good work in trying to bolster our state-to-state agreements. I believe we added Rhode Island recently, and then also working on Kentucky as well. I think that one's getting close, and we've got a handful of other states that we're trying to get those across the finish line too, just so we can bolster our state-to-state agreements and more easily be able to share resources and take care of the finances a little bit easier as we need to ask for additional help. So definitely bolstering that, which is a good thing for us moving forward. And then with the federal impacts, we kind of provided an update back in March, I believe, when we met last time. So I really wanted to talk about that a little bit because we do know a little bit more, but there's still definitely some unknowns. Staffing, we're being told within leadership levels at the PNWCG group that I'm a part of, still planning on fully hiring their primary fire positions for the most part. There will be some delayed start times for those. Good example is typically they'll bring them on May 1st or June 1st, and some of those resources may not start now till June 15th or July 1st, or even into July a little bit further. So districts are working to try to backfill some of those as best we can. and help cover our partners too. But one of the other things we're finally starting to realize now, and we're starting to finally see some numbers for some of the agencies, but they just completed round 2 of the DRP, their deferred resignation program, and the early retirement options. And at least for the Forest Service, we have numbers nationally. They're down 1,600 staff that have red card qualifications that took part in the DRP program. And with that, now we're finally starting to get wind of the impacts they have nationally just to their complex incident management teams. So last summer, there was 44 interagency IMTs. It was 40 as of a month ago, and now they're saying it's around that 37 once they got through the second round of the DRP. So alarming trend there with just nationally those IMTs going down. Within Region 6, they're still saying 7. But I think as the summer goes on, 7s could turn to 6 or maybe even 5. But for right now, they're still saying 7. So there is fairly big impacts to the IMT part of the equation nationally that we're going to keep a close eye on. Hence that Northwest Compact IMT, why I think it could be a resource for us this summer. So, and for some reason, don't know the drivers for it, but there's been a lot of impacts to fire finance staff within the federal agencies, in particular around buying teams and purchasing cards. I think last we heard they were actually down to just 11 purchasing cards in the region that they were able to within the federal agencies. But they've been able to work through some policy changes to where they think they're getting close to where they were last summer with the amount of staff that can have purchasing cards again and going into the summer. So that's actually a good thing. But I would say there's still some concerns just with the lack of fire finance staff, ultimately what those buying teams will look like for the federal agencies. So that's something we'll have to navigate this summer. And it's something I know Tracy and our protection finance staff and our district business managers are tracking very closely. And then I think another piece, the original language in the DRP I forgot to touch on was of those 1,600 people, originally they wouldn't be able to come back and work for those agencies wherever they were from. But I think it was up to 5 years. But they've been able to work through some policy changes as well. To where there might be a pathway, in particular for the Forest Service. The BLM is kind of waiting to see how the Forest Service figures it out, but they're trying to work through a policy change to where they can actually bring back some of those red carded individuals that were part of the program and hire them back for this summer. Last conversation I had with my counterpart within the Forest Service, all signs were pointing that they were making really good headway to where they think there's a pathway there. So that is some good news with the 1,600 red card militia model folks that they did lose. So more to come there, but I think all signs are pointing in a good direction. And then moving on to the WHOOP. So just for context for folks, so this current fiscal year was the first year of the 2-year agreement that we signed this time last year, or I guess I should say, yeah, I guess it is June, with the option to extend that annually for up to 5 years. Part of the new WHOOP agreement was we would have essentially a budget meeting with BLM leadership prior to the bill going out for the upcoming fiscal year. We did that meeting a couple weeks ago, and as expected, with a 12% increase in the overall budget, we need to have some more conversations with BLM leadership before the bill goes out for next fiscal. Some of it's tying to just trying to figure out where we end up with 3940 and what the bill will ultimately be as changes are made. So more to come on that one, and definitely some more conversations. We've agreed to have another meeting or two prior to July to fine tune that and work through the issues. But a lot of it's going to be tied to just where we end up with the current legislative session. So definitely more to come with that one. But we need to have some more meetings with BLM leadership to figure out next steps. So unless there's questions for me, I'm going to hand it over to Ron.
No questions. Thank you for a good report. Ron, can you make it any cherrier?
You know me,
Any
better.
rosier? Any?
Good morning, Chair Greltz, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Ron Graham. I serve as the Deputy Chief of Fire Operations for the Protection Division in ODF. I'm going to give you a little brief update on our geo board, some additional IMT topics, very brief update on forest land classification status. I'm going to turn it over to Neil Loggle for a severity resource plan update. And unless there's additional area comments to the written report on strategic investment status, we'll forego that. So, GeoBoard, our next quarterly GeoBoard is later this month. We've shifted to a quarterly model with that group. We have some new members. We will be discussing and considering with the membership update whether we move this potentially to a working group or a task group, pending the legislative session outcomes. We don't have a lot of current topics that we're dealing with. And in fairness to everybody's time and looking at how we could be more efficient, we might just have a standing working group that we task projects out to as needed. Kind of related though, earlier in the month of May, we held our agency administrator training. I think that's relevant to this group as we had some long-term district foresters, unit foresters, whatnot, that have served as agency administrators and some potential new deputy agency administrators that have never served but are interested in serving as that. So we had a one-day, kind of a half-day training session, first in a while. Nancy was able to attend. That was great to have Nancy sit in and be part of that conversation, and a lot of good sharing of knowledge, really to help keep our agency administrators and our deputy AAs in step with our federal partners, and just kind of the changing business rules around fires, from cost shares to, suppression strategies, tactics, all of that stuff. We'll continue to build that program out and look towards a model of an annual refresher, and then depending on need, put on a full-blown training in the future. But great attendance. And again, I would summarize it as the interest from some of the other programs, divisions even, was great to see people interested in that work. It's really important to get that stuff right in the beginning of an incident, for sure. Forest land classification status report. Basically, we're still on hold per direction from the governor's office, pending outcomes of the legislative session. So looking at probably the next meeting of this group to have an update with some new information regarding that. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Neil. Neil walked through some of our severity planning efforts, connections to, as Michael mentioned, some of the impacts from our federal partners, and some new direction we've gone in response with our severity resources. So Neil?
Good morning, Neil Loggle, State Aviation Manager for Oregon Department of Forestry. On the aircraft side, it's been a interesting winter, spring, and going into this summer. If you remember last year, we brought on 2 Type 1 helicopters under a call-in agreement. This year, those have been solidified under a contract. The one Type 1 that was last year that was in Glendale, moved with the area directors. That'll be based out of Cresswell to help support Northwest Oregon and South Cascade, and that was awarded to Croman Helicopters. There, the second Type 1 that was in Klamath Falls, that's the intent award's been posted. We're currently in the 7-day protest period, which will end Friday. No protests. We'll be able to officially award that aircraft and move on there. One of the big things we're faced this year, or several years ago, there was an incident where King Air with the Forest Service and doing an air attack, a roll lost a wing and had fatalities. Through that, the NTSB recommended some further inspections, and they started so the Turbine Commander Fleet, Forest Service grounded to do inspections, which that aircraft makes up 85 to 90% of the air attack platforms. They found fuel leak issues that they've been known for more than expected, and finding more cracks in the tail section of those aircraft there. And just the sheer number of those needing those parts and replacement parts, there's a shortage on parts along with that, and still a lot of uncertainty as to how many air attack platforms that'll be back in the system. They are making contingency where they're actually looking at staffing 2 air attacks per 1 platform. there, and also through Region 6 and others, they're offering up, if we have platforms, that they'll be glad to help staff those with air attacks from the federal side that do not have platforms. So in response to that, we have reached out. We have 2 air attack platforms currently finishing up their inspections with the FAA, and we'll be going to Redmond June 10th to be federally carded by the Forest Service. So Region 6 has been very helpful in making that happen, and we're working on a 3rd air attack platform there. So we'll have 2 on 75-day contracts and a 3rd as a backup in the event one of those is down for maintenance, or we need to pull in additional resources based on the fire season. So that's looking promising there. The 1 aircraft will be in La Grande, and the 2nd air attack platform will be in Roseburg.
These are contract?
Well,
The air attack platform.
under emergency agreement for this summer. There, so people in minimum 75 days on those contracts.
And these are under contract, under the emergency, as you said, and they're already in our severity program. Is that what I understand that you say? And then we're getting them carded to be able to fly off hours on the feds.
Yeah, correct. We'll be using severity funds for those for this summer under emergency agreement.
Excellent. That's good. Thank you.
And then the last, the Partnavia, we'll continue to have issues. Those issues from last summer have been corrected, so that aircraft's up and ready to go this summer. Rolling status quo there, and then I'll round it out with we're successful in the sole source procurement of the new MMA aircraft. That contract will be signed this week, and work will begin here shortly with an anticipated delivery date of by April 2026, with potential to have that aircraft here sooner. So everything, the stars are aligning, and that aircraft should be 100% ready to roll for summer of 2026. That's the end of report. Any questions?
This is Catherine. I appreciate the positioning in Cresswell of the aircraft for Northwest Oregon, recognizing that we are facing a potentially bad fire season in the western part of the state. So I do appreciate that and wanted to let you guys know. And as we go forward, this isn't so much about the aircraft, but just in general, since half of our districts are in fire season and the legislature hasn't wrapped up, and if there's immediate work to do as a result of the legislative session, I just want to make sure that we have adequate resource planning to get that work done, in a recognition that it's going to be potentially a lot of staff time and work to get that done, and that it might not be able to happen as quickly as some agencies that don't have things to do in the summer when they start rulemaking. So I remain concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And my apologies, I did forget to add that the fire bosses and the Dows for the first set of severity aircraft will be June 8th, and we'll be discussing tomorrow afternoon the start of 2 single engine air tankers in Prineville, with a potential start date of June 15th.
Are there any west side seats?
No.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add on the air attack platforms we are bringing on. So I'm actually pretty excited about this opportunity we've got. Obviously, we're just planning for it to be a 1-year thing right now, just in response to some of the federal platforms being grounded. But we've got every intention to be able to turn this into a permanent fixture of our severity program moving forward, because we're not using less aircraft from what we're seeing, right? If anything, we need access to more. So if we do get 3942 pass, or if somehow we are able to get some additional funding in our severity program, our goal is to turn that into a permanent fixture for us. And really what that buys us is a program that we've really have been lacking historically to be able to build our air attack qualifications up in this agency. It's the qualification we've been short on historically. So we'll be able to really bolster just our aviation program in general once we're able to get this up and running. So very excited about that. And maybe just for Catherine's comment, and I missed the first part of it, so if I don't address some of it, I'm sorry. But I would say, just from a staffing standpoint, even if 3940 didn't pass, I'm feeling pretty good with where we're at with our current service level and all the planning work we're doing. We are bringing some resources on early, just given the fire season starting earlier in some districts, especially with those the fire bosses coming on and those seats coming on early. So from that standpoint and the staffing standpoint, I'm feeling pretty good. In terms of rulemaking, we've been able to be successful with some investments made in staffing, especially in our policy shop within the division, to where we have a dedicated rulemaking position in Ryan Miller that if we have to do a lot of rulemaking during the summer, once the session is over, we've already got him on point and in the queue for essentially being the main point in contact. So all of our staff can focus on putting the fires out in the summer, and he can still maintain that work going forward for any rulemaking that needs to occur. So from all that standpoint, I am feeling pretty good in terms of staffing. Obviously, depending on how severe fire season gets, we may need to pivot on some things, but at the end of the day, in having Ryan and that additional policy person, it really sets us up for success moving forward. So feeling good from that perspective. So
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that we're well positioned, but I also want to note that it could get out of hand and that we should scale the outside expectations of what we could accomplish to the fact that we do have that your agency has extracurricular activities that they do during the summer.
Yep.
How's that?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, good of the order for agenda item 8. Anything else to add? All right, that's a thorough report, gentlemen. Thank you. And for those of you who can't see this tiny little box, Kate Skinner did have to leave to attend another obligation. So thank her for her report as well. We will close agenda item number 8 and move on to agenda item number 9, the administrator report. Before I hand the floor over to Nancy, I just want to warn the public that following that report will be the public comment period. If you have a comment to make, please use the raise your hand function. We will pause for a very brief 10-15 seconds when I transition to that agenda item. For anybody to grab their mouse and make that happen. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, Nancy, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Nancy Hirsch, the Emergency Fire Cost Committee Administrator. And my report might be a few minutes more than it usually is. I definitely have some recognitions to make. You know, the fire season from last year has been talked about in a lot of different ways. And financially, folks are pretty familiar that gross costs were over 300 million. And that was more than epic. You know, it's like 3 times more than a regular average, you know, already large costly wildfire season for the department. So we're on the heels of just completing the audit season from that fire season. And I have some specific thank yous that I want to make. First to Lorna here, Hobbs. She works diligently for months, acquiring, tracking, and organizing all the reports, claims, and links to district-specific fires, organizing all the audits, auditing, and tracking any findings. And does so without any direction, works very well independently and closes all loops. So thank you, Lorna. I'd like to thank the area accountants, Jerry Johnson and Anthony Texer. Thank you for your expertise in creating all the pre-audit and audit reports for all the districts and the Emergency Fire Cost Committee and your support in the audit team itself. From the Protection Finance Unit, Tracy Rolson, the manager, for being there, present, engaged, and tracking estimated costs to actuals with an eye towards always continuous improvement. The two incident business advisors that work for Tracy, Deanna Drinkwater and Alexis Webb, and Debbie Queen, for their assistance in the auditing. So it was a really, really solid audit team. The auditors would not have been successful without, finally, the district and association employees, specifically the district business managers and their fiscal staff. I want to say thank you for their tremendous effort in tracking, organizing, and managing documentation from the beginning to the end of an over $300 million in expenditures. And I want to give folks here and virtually that are observing today just a sense, if you think about all of those resources, firefighters, dozers, crews, you name it, these district staff are tracking all the resource orders, Lend-Lease documents, resource agreements, and rates for all of the contracts with individual resource agreements, Vipers, federal crews, call when needed contracts, emergency use agreements, which we've talked a lot about, crew manifests, shift tickets, resource invoices, general messages tied to all the little things that happen on a fire that don't go exactly in a straight line. They provide that documentation to explain the rationale and the basis for those decisions. Motor pool and association mileage reports, credit card packages, billing memos, you name it. Just wanted to give a little bit of flavor and credit to the level of detail that the district business managers and their team have accomplished in front of us arriving for the audit. Also want to thank John and Eric as new members. They were able to get out and join the audits in several locations. So I put all that as context to kind of, so what, what were the audit results? And to be quite honest, hearing from the district staff and operational staff as well, this is one fire season that I would characterize. I was at a loss for words in many cases, and if not all cases. We really have people that have experienced a fire season that myself, having been around for, I think, 40 some years now in fire seasons, I have not experienced that. And I have one word to describe the audit results: exceptional. This has been an exceptional year in financial accountability and responsibility from the costliest fire season on record. ODF and associations have very dedicated fiscal and administrative employees. They are getting very well practiced in the professional jobs they do. The audit results demonstrated precision and correctness of financial information that seems impossible given what they were handed in workload, scope, and scale. So I really just want to say congratulations on a job well done. Obviously, we'll have our regular financial or audit report back to the committee in January, but I wanted to give you a sense of how great the results were. Moving on, during, again, the audits, we do a breakout with the district leadership managers, the operational folks, and we talked about had them share successful initial attack or extended attack or large fire, successful fire stops. And again, that'll come back to you with examples, stories from all districts, but I thought I would highlight a couple here today. Considering the drawdown on resources statewide during the 24 fire season, there were a lot of successful fire stops that didn't make the front page. And so a couple here I want to point out. One is, I'll highlight, was called the Durkee Fire in Northeast Oregon. It started around 8 a.m. on July 17th and quickly grew to 100+ acres, not long after the initial report. By the afternoon, Multiple air and ground resources were engaged, and the fire was chewing through not just acres, tens of acres, thousands of acres without resistance. Once again, there was no relief from nighttime temperatures, relative humidities, or wind, and the fire continued to burn through multiple control lines. During that same afternoon, the Pendleton unit, all part of the Northeast Oregon District, was also the beginning of the Battle Mountain complex and when it took shape. Back to the Durkee fire, it burned in both Baker and Malheur counties in eastern Oregon. It was the second largest wildfire in the United States and was the largest wildfire in Oregon's 24 season. It was started by lightning and burned over 290,000 acres. Here's the point I want to make about the success that this district still made in the scope and scale of a fire of that size. On July 18th, the 21st, and then again on the 25th, the Northeast Oregon District staff led emergency use agreements and locally procured IRA surge resources. So surge resources are designed for a very specific task to the Durkee fire in coordination with the CIMT to establish and hold key portions of the fire line. The ability to utilize these local resources that could respond within an hour or two was key to ODF minimizing acres burned, firefighting costs, and threats to the public and firefighter safety. That's just one example. It's nice to hear about successes versus just knowing that we all saw that Durkee fire, on the landscape just get bigger and grow and grow and grow all summer. Going to highlight one out of Southwest Oregon. I-5 mile marker 11.5. So this fire was later in the year on September 4th. The district responded to the last notable fire for its district of the season. It was still sunny, hot, and dry, and you had what you had, meaning all the other resources were either in central or eastern Oregon. There was only one Type 2 crew available. The fire started in the afternoon on the southbound side of the interstate, closing down both lanes and triggering level 2 and level 3 evacuation notices in southern Ashland neighborhoods. An aggressive initial attack by numerous local agencies, including rural fire departments, Ashland Fire Department, the U.S. Forest Service, and ODF, quickly contained the fire at 13 acres, even with the extreme fire behavior experienced. I-5 southbound lanes remained closed for some time while firefighters continued to mop up. There were 3 to 4 structures within the fire footprint, which the structure firefighters protected. One landowner had a pond for quick access. A night shift was called in to assure continued progress, and I-5 was reopened by 7 p.m. So I think everybody that fights fire knows that when you get an interstate shut down, it's a huge, huge deal. And to turn that around and have that reopened was a great success. So I've got one other example that is actually a short video that I came across in visiting with some folks out in Central Oregon. And I think Kelsey Ramos is going to help bring that up, and we'll just watch this little clip. Not sure we're getting the sound. Kelsey, I don't know if you can hear us, but if we can't get the sound, we probably will have to.
So I'm not positive what the issue is.
Okay, we're hearing you. What I can do, Kelsey, is I'll just forward this clip to the committee. No problem.
Okay, sorry about that.
Nope, no worries. Just a little taste of that is when you get the link, basically an ODF task force was assigned to the Battle Mountain repair group when they were reassigned to what was an emerging fire, the rail fire. And so the task force was comprised of mostly Klamath Lake District, Northeast Oregon, and Central Oregon resources and some contracted resources. Their mission on the Rail Ridge Fire was to assist in the burnout of the town of Dayville, and that's the Dayville Fire Chief that you'll see when you get a chance to watch the video. Again, just really dedicated, local firefighters, had the hardest fire season of their entire career, I think, for the entire state of Oregon, and still out there late in the year doing unique and great things. So that's kind of a flavor of the breakout stories on successful fire stops. I've just got a couple more items. We've already talked about the strategic investments. And I do understand your comment, Chair, about the eagerness to see things completed. I did have one-on-one discussions with several district staff that are engaged in particularly the detection cameras and getting those complete. And in some, I think the first off, the department had a shorter timeline, you might say, with strategic investment dollars that came from the legislature last year, which kind of put time constraints and not enough capacity to complete everything. Having said that, though, in many cases, districts are well on their way. Some of them are waiting for like lease agreements to be signed or approvals from the county. So I do see progress being made, and I just wanted to point that out. Just a couple other topics. Ron touched on the deputy or agency administrator training that the agency put on, and I thought ODF did a really great job with that. And why that's important, the capacity of district foresters and district managers, given us the scope and scale of last fire season. I have just a couple nuggets here to share. For those of you that truly understand the role of an agency administrator, the South Cascade District dealt with 28 different incident management teams over the summer. Obviously, one agency administrator cannot do that. The Northeast Oregon rolled through 11 incident management teams during the 24 fire season. And possibly a fun fact, though it probably wasn't a lot of fun, they actually hosted all 3 of ODF incident management teams at the same time in their district. Central Oregon dealt with an in-brief 28 incident management teams and 6 type 3 incident management teams. And this role and this function is so critical relative to being there and in-briefing teams and onboarding them to understand the ODF and the Oregon way about fighting fire, making sure that there's engagements at those daily meetings that incident management teams have regarding their plans for the future, and ultimately holding the incident management teams accountable. So just want to shout out for the tremendous effort made by agency administrators and deputy agency administrators last fire season. Lastly, Michael and others have already talked about the status of, federal counterparts for this fire season. And one of the other things I would just note that districts talked about this year, and that was in many cases and places that the local type 3 incident management teams are really getting challenged, not necessarily on the operational front, but the logistical front, plans front. And I think that what you described relative to that 1,600 FTE in the U.S. Forest Service, that's going to continue to put, that shortfall will continue to put strain on districts being able to go from an initial attack, extended attack to a type 3 versus really needing to call for help and get some logistical support. So that's what I have for my report. I want to say thank you also, committee, for your support of the policy changes today. End of my report.
Thank you, Nancy. I want to echo your appreciation to all those with the audits. The part of firefighting that makes the news is not the finances. And it is incredibly important when you start to weave in FEMA, federal participation with the WOOP, with the Forest Service. Everybody does need to get paid and for the work that they do. And our audits and our finance teams across the state, um, there's nothing sexy about doing finance audits or finance of fire, but it is so important. And genuinely from this committee, thank you. I know several of you are on this call listening, and please pass that thanks from this committee on to your staff. And Lorna, Nancy, thank you very much. I guess I already transitioned to public comment, good of the order, unless there are any go backs from committee members on the administrator report. Okay, hearing none, this is my 15-second warning to members of the public for any public comment. Please raise your hand, use that function. Okay. I think that was like 8, but it felt long enough, right? Go to the order of committee members. Anything else to add to today's meeting? If not, I will seek some consensus to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to adjourn the meeting.
All right, I like that idea. Let's move forward with adjourning the meeting. Today we'll.
I apologize. This is Peggy Lynch, League of Women Voters of Oregon. I tried a couple of times to get in, evidently didn't do so. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah, I'm sorry very much. I did want to say thank you very much for the really good meeting today. I really appreciated what I learned from each of you. We're supportive of getting ODF fire funding in a place that works for everybody, including all Oregonians. So we're hoping that that will happen during the session. Thank you for all your work. And I was disappointed that I couldn't get in via Teams for some reason. I always like to see the slides that you provide, but thanks very much for everybody. I'll be quiet now.
Thank you for that comment. Is there anybody else? Okay. I'm going to continue that motion to close the meeting. The next quarterly EFCC meeting will be on Tuesday, September 2nd. And I will adjourn the meeting as of 11:37 on Tuesday, June 3rd. Thank you.